Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, we need more compassion and connection with Michaela Thomas. We talk about the 3 types of compassion, the cultural differences between the Swedish and the British, and how she's the worst Swede ever. She hates the cold.
Michaela Thomas is a clinical psychologist, couples therapist, and the founder of the Thomas Connection, a private psychology company helping people find their purpose and perform better without the pressure of perfection. Compassion is her passion, and she helps individuals, couples, and companies. Michaela is writing her first book, The Lasting Connection, on how to navigate love and strengthen a couple's relationship with compassion. She is currently creating online courses and retreats for couples and developing masterminds for anyone wanting to be less critical of themselves and reach their potential without perfection.
So we were thinking about getting someone else on the show today who was from another country. We've had a few guests. You've heard Joshua, Tama, Lizzie. So we thought someone from Scandinavia would be a good choice. So got the Volvo out, got the roof down, got the Swedish flag out, playing ABBA tunes. We've seen who we could find. And Michaela seemed to come out of the house to this call to ABBA songs. So if you've never heard Swedish before, it's quite like Swedish friends when they've come to Newcastle say, oh, it just sounds like Geordie. It's like everyone sounds like they're speaking Swedish here in Newcastle. So as an example, så idag ska vi prata lite med Michaela från Sverige. Så jag använder aldrig min svenska. Men så det är bra att prata lite på svenska.
Mycket bra att prata lite på svenska.
So, didn't really say much, but pretty much, I don't often talk Swedish, but today we're talking to Michaela from Sweden, and but you'll probably be pleased to know, we'll be doing the rest of the interview in English.
Goodness for that, because I can't speak a word of Swedish.
So, childhood in Sweden always brings up these wonderfully happy memories, and that I've not experienced, but having lived in Stockholm myself, I've seen children experiencing childhood. So
yeah, definitely.
Shall we start there? Where in Sweden are you actually from?
So I come from a very small village called Rättvik, which might be hard to pronounce even, where I lived for the first 15 years of my life. And that's sort of where those typical red horses that you have as a symbol of Sweden, they come from very close to where I grew up. So I literally come from the postcard of Sweden. And my very first cassette tape was ABBA Gold. So that's probably why I followed your car like a zombie.
We didn't have to get the meatballs out and
that would have helped.
Put
them on a stick. Yeah. And it's like brains, but meatballs. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I grew up. And then I moved to the nearby town when I went to high school, which was a bilingual high school. So we had to move. And that was a place called Falun, which has a fantastic copper mine, which is quite famous for.
So that's why you've got such a superb English accent.
Well, a bit of practice. I've been here for 9 years now in the UK as well. So, but I used to have a really strong Irish accent, which I have now worked away at leaving behind, unless I'm drunk.
Get the wine out.
You can't drink wine and have an Irish accent. You kind of have to go on the Guinness then.
I haven't got any.
No.
Bud, vodka, cider.
No.
So, growing up in Sweden then, did you ever have plans to want to live somewhere else, or did you know what you wanted to do in life?
Constantly, actually. I remember when I was 10, I think it was, I got asked by the local newspaper what we thought about, the EU, if we were going to join the EU or not. And I had this little newspaper snippet of me, age 10, saying, I think it's a great idea for Sweden to join the EU because I want to study in France, like some sort of, I don't know, middle-class falafel-eating person. But it's it's something that I've always wanted to do, I guess. Growing up in Sweden, I hated the winters. I'm just the worst Swede ever. I don't tan in the summer. You can't see, but I'm kind of fairly typically Swedish otherwise, blonde and blue-eyed, but I don't tan, and I hate the cold. I hate the winters. And you kind of feel when you have memories of going to PE, knowing that it would be outside, every single PE class would be outside unless it was below minus 16, then you wouldn't have to. And when it's sort of minus 30 and you sneeze and your snot freezes, it's just not that picture you see. Because the thing about snow is it's beautiful for about a few hours, and then it sets and it freezes over, and then it just goes into horrible, slippery, evil death. And it's just not my cup of tea. And then it goes into mush, and then that freezes over, and then it's not only just slippery, it's kind of really big knobbly bits of slippery ice, and it's just more death, really. So it's not my cup of tea. So I've often thought about moving back to Sweden, but because the cold and the darkness is just it's not for me.
But what I always really liked is in the season when everyone has to have their winter tires on, and it sounds like everyone's driving around on bubble wrap. Yeah. I found that fun.
It's good fun, and
but for another few hours, is that it?
Yeah, and again for a few hours, and then all the trains break down, and it's too cold to exist, really. When you go outside and you can't draw a breath because then your lungs hurt.
So, escaping Sweden, was that you made a decision on what to do to study first, or did you go and study somewhere else, or go on holiday, or get a job somewhere else? How did you kind of branch out into seeing the world?
I actually studied in Sweden. So after the bilingual high school, I moved down to Uppsala, which is sort of similar to Oxford in that kind of type of student town or student city. So a really big university, and I studied psychology there. So I already had my psychologist registration when I left Sweden. But for some reason, I thought there'd be much greener grass across the pond, and thinking that I would go and work in IAPT, so improving access to psychological therapy, so primary care psychology. So I then had to jump to quite a lot of hoops because the English are known for their bureaucracy, so I had to fill in about 2 kilos of paperwork for the HCPC, including a physical checkup by a doctor saying I'm fit to practice. So I had to pay for a private physician to say, can you see properly? Okay, I'll sign you off then. So she couldn't figure out what they needed to have. And one of my best friends had to sign a paper saying that I was sort of sound nature. She was a lawyer who had known me for 20 years, saying, okay, I think she's pretty sound, so she can come and work in this profession. None of these things that the UK trained people have to do to join this profession. No. So the UK obviously thought that our qualifications were not necessarily equivalent, so I had to do a couple of extra bits, and then I got my qualification in the UK as well after about 2 years here. So I didn't move here to study as such. I moved here for a particular opportunity or in a job, and at that point I was with the Irish guy who gave me the Irish accent. And we'd had a long distance for 3 years, so I thought, we'll make or break. We're gonna have to try it. So I didn't want to just move for any old job, like the typical Swede who lives on Edgware Road in London, together with like 7 other people to be au pairs. So I was my late 20s at that point, so I didn't feel like that was really the dream. So I moved when the right job opportunity came up, and the relationship was more on the break side at that point, so it just didn't work out. But it's one of those things that if you live long distance and then you move in together, it sort of shows you all the flaws that were a bit masked by distance and space. So that didn't work out, but at that point I was pretty much in love with being here, and I've stayed ever since. That's 9 years ago almost.
Wow. What did you start off with then? Was that some kind of practice work? What did that involve?
So that year, the first year, was actually sort of another training year. So that's replicating what I'd already done within my psychologist training. So I was training further in cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. But because I didn't have my psychologist registration, I had to go for the CBT therapist registration instead, which was a quicker route. And through this training program, I would then get a salary plus 2 days a week would be training and 3 days a week would be working in a hospital site. So I thought that was kind of a cushioned way in, and I got to be a trainee again despite not being, despite being qualified. So it was a great way to learn the system. So my mind could focus on some of the ridiculous abbreviations they use in this country. We like to abbreviate everything.
Yeah.
And, important cultural things like, so here's our beverage bay. I'm like, what's a beverage bay? Oh, you mean a tiny kitchen that has no seating? Okay, that's a beverage bay. Great. It literally has a hot water tap because you're too lazy to pop the kettle on. And here's a jar, and people refer to it as the kitty. Now put your money in the kitty. I'm like, why do you put the money in the cat? So that was really confusing for me as a foreigner of why do you not get milk from your employer? Like, why does your employer not pay for your milk?
Most do.
Yeah. Not in the NHS.
No.
Not in
No.
the NHS.
No. When I worked in the NHS, they didn't.
Yeah.
But I didn't drink milk at the time, so I wasn't putting money in the kitty.
That's not allowed though, because you need to just contribute. Even if you have no intention of drinking milk, then you have to sort of. And that happened to me in a later job years later, where I tried to opt out of the milk rota. That was frowned upon.
Oh.
It was a serious office politics.
I think we were okay in the north, though.
Yeah,
I think it's a difference. It might be the north-south thing.
It might be. I've only worked in the south, to be fair. I'm up here visiting. I've never lived up in the north, so I come from a different kind of north.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Northerer.
More northern, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Use your words,
Lovely.
Shelley. It's really warm today, so
It
I'm
is.
blaming that.
And I've had like 4 hours of sleep, so we'll have to sort of bring some compassion to listening to this.
Yeah.
Like, we're all hot and tired and sweaty.
Yes, a little bit. So you worked in the NHS.
Yeah.
And you don't work in the NHS now, though, do you?
No, I don't.
You escaped, didn't you?
That's one way of putting it, yes.
So what is it you do now, Michaela?
So I now run a private practice called the Thomas Connection, linked to my surname, obviously Michaela Thomas. So that I do that 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week I'm at home with my toddler. So I balance sort of motherhood with being an entrepreneur. So that's all the income I do now is from the private work. So that's quite fun.
Excellent. And what kind of things do you help your clients with?
So it's a real mixture, really. I mean, the typical people who would come and seek me out on Google and come straight to my website would be people who are quite high striving, quite high standards for themselves. They might give themselves a really hard time if they make a mistake, or they might be very worried about failing or not being good enough in their workplace. And so that's kind of the individuals who come to see me. Some of them have left it so late that they've kind of really hit the wall and they're very burnt out, exhausted, depleted. So that might lead to, quite physical symptoms of that. So stress, anxiety, panic attacks, feeling really low in their mood. But I also see a lot of couples, and often one or two of them has exactly those same things that those individuals. So obviously those people who come to see me also are involved in partnerships. So if you're really burnt out and tired and exhausted, your relationship is also going to suffer because of that link between your mental well-being and your relationship well-being. They're very highly correlated. So those two people come. I see a lot of new parents, so especially mums struggling on the motherhood journey because of some of the connections I have, which I'm no doubt we're going to talk about later, with other sort of motherhood projects. And then lastly, I do corporate wellbeing programs as well. So helping people sort of find their purpose without the pressure of perfection, essentially. So that's what I do.
Because is there anything sort of commonly that underlies the problem, say, that people come to see you about? Is it this lack of fulfillment? Is it a lack of purpose? Is there anything that commonly crops up?
Yeah, I definitely hear that quite a lot. People who, some people come with sort of more of a clinical issue. They might say, "Oh, I'm struggling with," and they might name that. They might have been labelled or diagnosed by a doctor. Okay. Because obviously I'm a clinical psychologist. I am trained in treating things that can impair your day-to-day life functioning. But so many people also feel that it's not necessarily something they can pinpoint. It's just more of a feeling like I just don't feel like life is really the life I've signed up for, or it's not really fulfilling me, or I don't feel like I'm reaching my true potential. And they might feel that they're going through the motions, getting up in the morning, feeding their kids, dropping them at school, going to work, and then come home and then, watch I think it is 4.4 hours of TV on average or whatever it is. And they just feel like, is this all there is? And those people are often quite lost and they're looking for direction. I often think of it as sort of like being lost in the woods. And my job is, rather than to get them to run faster, run around in the woods, because a lot of people just try to resolve this problem by working harder or working faster, being more busy. But that just leaves you being more lost in the woods and running around faster. And the darkness is setting and you're getting more scared and cold. So my job is really to try to give them a compass and a map to figure out how do we set out a direction to then pick one area that we're going to explore and then see if we can take some small steps slowly in that direction with the compass. And that could be, I just want to see if I can, sometimes it's about changing their work, their tasks at work, and communicating better with their managers about what they find meaningful, or sometimes about, career development and coaching them there to swap jobs. Sometimes it's about my relationship isn't really fulfilling me. I need to be able to communicate better with my spouse about what I want to get out of life. So it's really that sense of being quite lost, and I don't know what to do. I don't know where I want to be, and how do I get there once I figure out where I want to be. If that makes sense.
It does, yes. And often you need someone external to be able to help give you that direction, which is, it's almost like you're going around a roundabout. Or if you could almost use the analogy of, you hear these stories of people getting lost in the woods in Canada. And it's not just like somewhere in the UK. You could probably keep walking and eventually hit a conurbation somewhere. Over there, you can be lost for weeks and
exactly.
never see anything but the odd bear. So by having someone that can, I suppose, come in and direct in the right way is very powerful. Do you find is it happening at a typical age in someone's life or career?
It really varies. I mean, I see a lot of Swedish clients as well, as you've pointed out that I'm from Sweden, so I obviously got that language skill. And a lot of the Swedes I see are sort of mid-20s to mid-30s. And the English people I see, especially the couples I see, might be more sort of, 30s to 40s. So that's usually when you've been together for a significant long enough period in your relationship to someone, those relationship patterns really being quite unsustainable. Whereas if you see someone who's been together for a year or two, they might have things that they struggle with, but it's not as cemented as some of those people who come as couples. But overall, I would say that 25 to 40 is probably my biggest age range.
Do you see any difference then culturally in terms of perhaps how we're brought up as Brits versus how the Swedes view relationships or careers, or is there any major thing that stands out?
There's not like the Swedes I see are thinking about moving back to Sweden because of, the officers not paying for milk. I mean, that's not the kind of the deal breaker. It's not that like, oh my God, this kitty, if this wasn't here.
It's useful on a night out as well, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But no, those are not really the deal breakers. It's often to do with work pace. So a lot of people come to see me, the Swedes come to see me because they feel really, really burnt out. Like much like myself, they come here with ambition, with an idea and an inspiration that this is something I can do to contribute. I'm going to explore this purpose, this path that might be different to the people you left behind who might have stayed in the same small town that they grew up in and had a couple of kids. And the people I see are often feeling, actually, no, I'm destined for some bigger things. You know, that the song from Moana with the girl who's singing something about how far will I go? It's a little bit like that. So they kind of set sail and then they're just like, oh my God, this ocean is never ending. And am I making a mistake looking at how grounded and settled the people are back home? So there's a lot of kind of things around where's home, where are my roots? If I settle here, what is London life like compared to if you lived in a small town in Sweden? So the cultural differences are more around, I guess, how we express our needs is quite a big thing. So when I see intercultural relationships, if I see someone who's Swedish and English, they might really struggle in sort of assertively expressing their needs. So the Swedish person might be, I mean, these are just statistical averages, of course, but they might be more able to say what they want and need, and the English person might be more blocked in that because of fear of anger is a big thing. You know, if you can't express anger, need to be polite. But then you just sorry for saying sorry. And I started doing it. I started saying sorry when people bump into me, and so, but that's not my fault. It's your fault. But I'm saying sorry because it's nice. So there's a lot of things there that can be helpful. But if it's driven by fear or avoidance of conflict, then that can be really, really painful in a relationship where one person who's far more heated and able to express what they want and need, and the other person is more self-silencing and can't say it because of cultural norms. So that can be hard.
Is there any struggle, say, as a Swede coming across to work within then in a British culture?
Yeah,
which is because I found that as well, actually, because I'd left the UK fairly young, so I'd worked in France and Sweden and the States, and to actually come back to work in a British office was so fun. I always find, I don't know about anyone else, but the phrase annual leave is such a British, that's like, you're on annual leave. What on earth does that mean? We're not allowed to say we go on holiday, we go on vacation. No, we're on annual leave, which sounds like some military.
It does, and walk out of the office in straight lines.
I'm leaving out on Friday, I will be on annual leave. I'm going for my medical checkup, for my biannual medical checkup, and I'll be doing military type operations. I'll be cutting the hedge. Why can't we just say we go on holiday? I find it really really funny. So coming back to the UK was strange. So I'm waffling on a bit, but so for a Swede to come to the UK, is there any major differences, do you think, with
definitely
culture?
Around the office culture around taking leave, and it's almost like having to do so in an apologetic way. I mean, there's obviously a range here. I mean, it's not like in Japan where there's a Japanese phrase for apologizing for leaving before other people. So everyone leaving the office has to say this phrase until there's only one guy left. He obviously doesn't say it to anyone because he got to win the game and he got to leave last.
We used to play that though.
Yeah.
In organisations I've worked at, it's called chicken.
Yeah.
So the first person to leave was frowned upon.
Oh yeah, because you've not done your FaceTime then.
No, how dare they leave to go and pick their child up? Or it's that kind of, I'm going to come in when I'm ill, and it's like culture presenteeism.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've seen that even in the NHS, that when you have sickness episodes being triggered. So if you're off for more than 4 times in a year, even if it's one day, which you're allowed to have within your sickness policy, having to have these quite uncomfortable interviews about explain exactly how you were sick, and even though you're allowed to self-certify do you want me to show you? It's unpleasant. It also leaves very little room for being off feeling mentally unwell. I mean, if you have to have I have to feel poorly enough to leave the office. So I think one of the big changes that I've experienced is this pull or this impulse to do your work when you're away on leave. That we Swedes don't do that. We just everyone's counting down to their 5 weeks of holiday or whatever. The country stops, and that's annoying. But people just check out, and we have that proper restoration period where you are switched off. And I think as a clinical psychologist, seeing people who are working their I was about to swear there, working very, very hard to kind of climb the corporate ladder, and then taking 4 days off for a long weekend or whatever, then that becomes really, and then they feel guilty and have to check their emails. Having clients who going on a yoga retreat and still working, it's ridiculous.
And that's what, so for my experiences of being in Stockholm, in a company, very flat hierarchy, it was embraced. So one colleague, he had 2 young daughters, and rather than sort of slink out on the sly, it's like, I hope nobody saw me leave because I'm going early. It's probably about 2:30, something around there. It's like, well, everyone, see you tomorrow. Just off to pick the girls up from nursery. Totally acceptable. And if you got your work done, nobody cared. And I loved sort of end of June, beginning of July, where everyone thought I was bonkers for taking holiday in August. You're going on holiday in August, James. Why on earth would you do that? But everyone would be like, right, see you in August, everyone. I'm taking my 5 weeks off.
You need to be off for midsummer, obviously.
For midsummer.
Yeah.
Obviously, you take off the time when it's the best weather, so you make the most of it.
Yeah.
And it's proper recharge time.
It is.
It really is.
It really is.
And it's, and I suppose we're almost between the US and Sweden in that the US, typically you don't have holiday, you work to generate as much income as you possibly can to have good healthcare, pay for college for the kids, etc., etc. But it's very different, and I wonder if that's contributing to overall mental health issues. Of there is no rest, there's no disconnect. That the talks of, it's France, isn't it, that banned emails after 6 p.m. But whether or not people are actually still checking them, and the expectation of getting a response, I don't know.
Well, that's a tricky bit when you have quite a toxic environment where the expectation is that you deliver in that kind of way. That delivery means FaceTime or presenteeism, that you have to be present to be able to show that you're dedicated to the work. Whereas, having agile working or flexible working, where you can think about how can I reach my potential? Some people work better from home. Some people should really not be working from home. And knowing that and figuring that out of where are you able to be the most innovative and creative and productive. Some people that might be in the morning, for some people it might be in the evening, depending on our different rhythms and our bio clocks, basically. But I mean, I guess it's been a while since I lived in Sweden now, but I guess looking at our productivity studies around 6-hour working days or 4-day working weeks, then actually you don't then have to apologize for following your purpose in other things, knowing that actually it's okay to be driven and want to do well and reach success, but also want to do other things outside of work. I mean, I think that's, the difficult thing, calling this sort of the work-life balance, but it's more about the difficult life choices I've made. That's how I think of it. It's you can't necessarily balance it at all times. It's about how do I make wise choices that take me towards my purpose and my values.
Yes, you can do work that you enjoy, you can be successful, you can also have a family.
Yes.
And you can also have time for doing something you enjoy outside of that, which I think growing up in, my perception's always been in the UK, it's almost, you can't have both, can you? You've got to sacrifice one or the other. You can have a great family life, but it means you're not going to do as well in the corporate world. You go the other way, so I'll skip having kids and I'll plow on, work 100 hours a week and get
drop
wealthy,
down dead
and then I'll
50.
Or have to check out and do something else entirely, and work with pottery or something because you just can't take it. And I think that's the mentality of, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. That's so unhelpful. That it isn't about the individual's lack of resilience or lack of being able to kind of cope and be capable enough. It's not about the individual. It's about when we put people in toxic environments, we can't be surprised that they're not going to thrive and they're not going to blossom. So looking at your plant there on the windowsill, there's a few different plants here, and they all need different setups. They all need different amounts of daylight or amounts of water, and we all as humans are the same way. And I think that in the environments I've worked in Sweden, the types of line managements we would have would be looking at, what do you need to thrive in this environment? How can we help you, and to make that sustainable, so that you can also do things that are important to you. And that's a huge reason why I chose to fully go private, even though there's a risk, and the NHS is, like the Iron Rice Bowl from China, that is a sense of providing you with pension and stability. You can't really be fired regardless of how crappy you are. Not that I ever was worried about that aspect, but it's that sense of dependability that I just didn't feel was providing me what I wanted. So the thing I came to the UK for was no longer there. I was seeking something else. And that led to an episode of burnout for me while I was still working in the NHS, because our targets were going up more and more and more. The environment was unsustainable, and we were expected to treat people with complex needs in a sort of conveyor belt kind of fashion. And I tried to change the system from within for years, and I tried to provide opportunities for staff to have rest and well-being kind of opportunities, working with things like self-reflection groups, self-compassion groups. But I was just told the message that we don't feed those who aren't hungry, and psychologists are really good at self-care, which we are not. So I just thought, actually, this is too big for me as one person, and with deep regrets in some ways, I just had to leave it behind, or where I was going to drown. And that I left when I Well, I decided to leave when I was pregnant, that I was going to take my maternity and then come back and reassess. But I just handed my notice in when I came back from maternity leave. And that was, I've not looked back since now. I'm very happy where I am now, I have to say.
So how do you balance motherhood and setting up a business?
It's a tricky one, and it's a question I get quite a lot. And with the sort of work I do with Nourish Your Mind, an app for postnatal women, and Motherdom, a mental health magazine for parents of young children, I just don't think of it as balance, because it gives that image of busyness that I have to keep spinning these plates and making sure they don't drop. I think of it more as I constantly assess what is the wisest choice here, and sometimes I get that wrong. Like today, I've chosen to come to your lovely house whilst my son is with his father and the rest of my husband's family, and that's why I'm up north. So I'm missing out on a barbecue. So then you have to think about, when you have a values conflict or a dilemma in some ways, can you then make a wise choice to make up for that elsewhere? You know, it might be that I really make sure to cuddle him a bit extra in the bedtime tonight, or you kind of think about, how do I make sure that I haven't lost track of that compass? And it might be that I have a set quota per year that I can do these things where I choose a work opportunity or a connection this way over family life. So you have to just think of the bigger picture. This is not, your life is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to think about, I'm constantly making wise choices. And one way to think of it is sort of almost like you're standing at a crossroads where you have a choice. So it's a choice point, or you can go towards your values in taking steps that are aligned with what you think is important, or you can take steps away from it. And when you notice that you've taken a step away from it, what I've worked on a lot in my motherhood journey as an entrepreneur is to think about, oops, I just drifted away from what was important, and I gently return without beating myself up for it. Because it's that common phrase of, you're supposed to mother as if you don't have a job to go to, and you're supposed to work as if you don't have to have a child to look after. And it's an impossible equation. And just starting with that piece of wisdom, like, actually, you know what, this is really hard. And most working mums I know struggle with the same thing. So it's not about my own individual failure or inadequacies in managing this. It is just literally hard, and I'm going to get it wrong time after time. And that's how I often think of it, that it's not something you tick off as a box. It's more like, okay, I constantly keep coming back to this. How do I balance it?
And now you're writing a book.
Yes, I'm writing a book. My book baby. And when we were chatting about this podcast, I was a bit nervous about what I talk about. And you were saying, what did you want to be when you were a child? And actually, that is how the full circle has come for me, that I always wanted to be an author when I was little. And I wrote these stories. I actually won a box of sweets once for a short story competition about someone who jumped off a building. So that's when you see my interest in psychology. And it's kind of the intricacies of how this person was sort of going deeper into psychosis, and then unfortunately took its own life. And that was sort of age 15. So it was a bit gruesome already then. But then I wanted to be a profiler. So, kind of see people on Criminal Minds.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, that's cool, isn't it?
It's the best.
And then you realize you have to just spend your whole day talking to forensic people. And I'm, a petite lady who's scared of big, angry men. So it wasn't a career choice for me. But I really
don't have many serial killers as well.
No,
there's not enough really to go around.
No, there's not a lot of those. But that's where I started writing about, short stories about things like serial killer. I read so many Stephen King novels from like age 8. Completely inappropriate, but that's where my interest for writing has come. Like I love the way he's used his way with words. So coming full circle now as an adult, when this opportunity came up where to write this book, it was obviously not about serial killers and it's not fiction, but it's more about it's that bringing everything, all the wisdom I have about couples and that kind of connection they can form. So that's why I call it the lasting connection. So that's going to come out next autumn, and I'm still writing on it. I've got 54,000 words, so wow. it's getting there, but it's going to come out next autumn. So I'm really psyched about that.
Excellent. Lots of fun. Well, let us know so we can share it with
I will do.
Our humans that are listening.
I will do. There will be lots of, once I finish writing it in December, I'll be starting to share snippets from it as well.
Oh, brilliant.
Just trying to get sort of blog posts out, and I'll put bits on my, hopefully if I ever get my arse around to do it, the podcast that I want to do as well. So I'll be sharing things like that from it. And because I think it's important to not just say, oh, here's my book, come and buy my wisdom, but more actually this is for everyone. Part of why I'm on social media is for mental health awareness and understanding that there are little tweaks that you can make today that can make changes significantly to your mental well-being. And you don't have to read the whole book to get to that.
That's great. I can't wait to read it.
Good.
So James and I are currently delivering an Action for Happiness course.
Yes.
It's all about exploring what matters. And what I've got from it so far is the quality that I think happiness depends on the quality of your relationships that you have with other people, which is really interesting. We've got just people from all walks of life, people who are wanting to find happiness and also to spread happiness. So Action for Happiness calls them seekers and spreaders. Which is great, but it is, so if you're helping the world with, helping people to have lasting connections in terms of their relationships, then that's brilliant stuff that people need to read.
Yeah, they do. And it's that interesting thing that in Western society, we are so individualized. We're so focused on our own happiness. And, there's a lot of researchers have kind of focused on how the pursuit of happiness itself is what's causing us to be so unhappy because we're spending so much time, money and effort to try to be happy, and rather than kind of appreciating what we already have in some ways. So actually research shows that if you focus on the happiness of the other within a couple's relationship, yourself, your needs get met in a different way as well. So if you focus on, bringing compassion for your partner, that tends to spread. It tends to have a kind of nice ripple effect, and you don't have to be so worried about your own needs being met. So actually doing good feels good. Looking after other people feels good, and we tend to miss that in kind of quite a narcissistic society that's developing. We're seeing sky high levels of narcissism in the university populations of today. So we're, when I talk about compassion, it can often be misunderstood as just self-compassion. But we need to have all three flows of compassion, the flowing out from you to other people. And that could be random acts of happiness as part of that, that they would really advocate in Action for Happiness. But then also being able to receive that flow coming in. And a lot of people, you asked me about the cultural differences, a lot of Brits, I think, are very blocked in that. If someone asks you, do you want a cup of tea? No, I'm fine. There's that, I'm fine. Rather than saying, yeah, actually, I'm having a hard time. So that receiving and noticing when it's happening and letting it also come in can be really hard. And the last flow is then from yourself to yourself. But it's something that I see a lot. I noticed that through experience of the first few months in the new service, people are saying, hi, how are you? And I just launched into how I was actually feeling. And they moved down the corridor before I even finished. Like, no one actually wanted to know.
You're supposed to say the answer, fine, thank you.
Yes, yeah, I had to be taught that by, a member of staff who was, helping me to settle into the kind of like a new rotation, basically. It's like, no, you're supposed to say I'm fine and then smile and move on.
No, I'm dying. I'm dying inside, but I'm not going to let you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, if we go through the world like that, we're also never going to get our needs met, because we're not daring to be vulnerable enough to say, actually, I'm having a hard time. And that's where connection can really grow, not just in couples relationships, but between friends. If you're daring to be imperfect and say, this is hard, people then actually share some of their own vulnerabilities, saying, oh yeah, I went through that too. And then suddenly your friendship has grown. So I'm really passionate about helping people to be more vulnerable, to be brave and courageous in that way, to try to form more lasting connections with people around them, because that social connection that you talked about for happiness is one of several aspects, but it's hugely important because we don't go through life the same way we used to. We're not part of the tribal communities we used to be. We're parenting more and more in isolation, which is weird because we're hyper connected through WhatsApp and everyone's got a mum group somewhere, or you're on forums and Mumsnet or whatever. But it's not in-person communication where you're getting the full non-verbal stuff. It's not being touched by another human being. It's not sitting next to someone. And those things are really healing for us in our sadness. That chatting to someone on WhatsApp can be great because you can start to be more vulnerable in a way that you wouldn't dare to share elsewhere. Some of the stuff I've said to my mum friends, I would never say to them over a cup of tea. And that's been great, starting the conversation. But we are so isolated, and the loneliness ratings are just sky high, and that's a huge impact on our mental well-being. So getting closer to people, having a social connection is very linked with happiness.
Excellent.
So that makes a lot of sense. So for those people listening who are, I mean, it's got me thinking a lot. That's probably why I can't answer a concise question and I'm filling in. If that's of interest, what ways do you help people to find their purpose or get through a burnout or improve their relationships? What sort of things are on offer?
Well, being a fan of writing and alliteration, I've tried to think of it as sort of a 3P program. So pause, purpose, and play. So that I help people then, even if it's an individual or as a couple or as a corporate client, helping them to pause means slowing down so that you're able to actually reflect properly, because we're constantly busy, we're full of stress hormones. It's going to be really difficult to see beyond the end of your nose. So slowing down will help us to then start to reflect on purpose. What is actually meaningful, what is important, and how will you find that sense of fulfillment. And then when you then kind of thinking of as a DVD player, then press the play button again, you can move forward in life, finding your way out of the woods and act in a bit more conscious and aware way. So that might be that you've practiced some mindfulness skills or you practice compassion skills. So I essentially do very similar things, regardless if I help individuals, couples or corporates, because we are all, humans. We all have tricky brains, regardless if you're a leader or if you're a member of staff or if you're an individual who's been burnt out. We're just at different parts of the journey. So kind of helping people with neuroscientific interventions where I help people work with their bodies and their minds. And I do that in different ways. So it's almost like trying to find a menu so you can find your way in, because what we know is that actually it's best to just do what you can. Some people want to commit to coming in to see me one-to-one for coaching or for therapy. Some people prefer to dip in and out of sort of blocks I have or my social media awareness building stuff. Some people want to listen. So I'm building a podcast called Living Life, Light and Dark, which I'm going to try to launch during this year. And I'm building online courses and masterminds for couples and for people who struggle with perfectionism. And then if you really want to dive deep, then I'm building a retreat in Thailand next year in February for couples to come and really kind of figure out how to connect more deeply to each other again.
What a great place to do that.
Yes, it's fantastic.
The land of smiles.
It is, yeah. Service
Perfect
with a
place.
smile.
I think they're probably the happiest people I've ever seen before.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And that's why I've chosen Thailand as well, because there's something there about how we can learn from their way of connecting more deeply in everyday life as well. That's obviously based on Zen Buddhism, but it's also about how they look after other people. There's some really great infomercials or ads that have come out from Thailand that really shows that sense of value of looking after other people as a way to also look after your own well-being, and you'll feel happy if you've truly connected with other people in a selfless way.
Okay, so imagine you had a DeLorean and you're able to go back to when you were 18. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Beyond the amount of eyeliner I was wearing, I had a goth face. It's not good. I think that it would really be focused on just giving reassurance that things will be all right. And then one of the things that has really plagued me in both my private life and my business has been the way my inner critical voice gets in the way of what I want to do. It really shows up when I'm on the verge of doing something big or scary. And I've definitely seen that throughout my teens as well, that, being able to, not saying believe in yourself more or you can do this, but being able to just be kinder with yourself when you feel that you can't do this, as kind of finding a way to help myself pursue my passion and purpose without being so hard on myself. So taking some of that pressure off, essentially the very thing that I help people with today. I wish I could have helped my 18-year-old self, or even in my 20s, just to say, you know, look, your chronological age is going to catch up with your mental age, and it will be all right, because I was kind of born old, and your 30s will be your time to shine. Just hang in there. And I think that would be words of wisdom for myself and for any teenager. Like, it's just an awkward time. People will love you, you will be loved, and you will love, and it will hurt along the way, but that's just part of loving deeply.
If anybody would like to follow you on social media, get in touch, etc., what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, I've got different channels that do slightly different things. So if you're someone who's interested from a corporate point of view, like you want me to come and have a chat with you about well-being in your workplace, then connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're a parent or someone who just wants to read more about how to be kinder to yourself and not put so much pressure on yourself, then you might, you know, find me on Instagram to follow those kind of things. I post a lot about motherhood and imperfection. And if you want to have a chat with me, just no commitment at all, then just go to my website for the Thomas Connection, thethomasconnection.co.uk, and you can book a free call just to have a chat with me for 15-20 minutes about, you know, what could I actually help you with. So that's probably the best way. So you can drop me an email that way as well.
Fantastic.
And can you buy the retreat yet? Is the sales page up yet?
It's not yet, but it will be in the next few weeks. So if you're interested in that and you just want to hear more about it verbally, then drop me an email and we can have a chat on the phone to see if, because I've got the dates and things like that. It's just about navigating the price point depending on the negotiations with the retreat venue. So if you're interested and you want to see if you and your partner would fit for this, then just have a chat with me.
Wonderful.
We started with some Swedish. It feels like we've got to end with some Swedish. So
I'm going to say bye in English first. Like, bye, thank you.
Bye.
Så tack så jättemycket för idag. Det var intressant och jättetrevligt att prata lite svenska igen.
Mycket bra.
Så tack.
Tack.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway.
And tell everybody.